All right, everyone. Hello and welcome in. Today we're going to be having a conversation regarding the Nexus event that occurred yesterday at Minnesota Vikings training camp, and that was the activation of Kirk Cousins off of the COVID-19/reserve list, the subsequent press conference that he held with media for 10 minutes talking about COVID-19, his situation, and the path that he will be taking going forward. The reason we're talking about this and ripping off the Band-Aid, because this is now a football topic, it has jettisoned the Minnesota Vikings into the national spotlight for what I would argue to be are all of the wrong reasons. I understand that people are going to be upset about this video. They're not going to be happy with what I have to say, and that is okay. I am not going to get 100% of the people who watch my content to agree with me 100% of the time. I have come to terms with that reality. Going forward, I do want to make sure that we all remember a few things about Minnesota Vikings and football this year in general as we have this discussion. Number one, I want you to keep in mind this image, a picture of a helmet that was taken at training camp this year. And notice that decal on the back, the state of Minnesota, where it says one team. Keep that image in mind. I also want you to remember this quote by Mackenzie Alexander. Think about what he's saying this year, because he was also a member of that really awesome 2017 team. Keep his quote in mind as we go forward. The other thing that I want to mention is that it appears, because of the beliefs of Kirk Cousins and the fact that the Minnesota Vikings have one of, if not the lowest vaccination rate amongst players out of the entire 32 team league, that there is some doom and gloom that will loom over the regular season for the Minnesota Vikings going forward because of where we are at currently, and we run a high risk of jeopardizing player availability for the rest of the season, and we run a high risk of potentially losing or even forfeiting games because of that scenario. And I believe that this is a problem because, and I would argue that most fans, myself included, have really high expectations this year. We're thinking about getting back to the playoffs and making a run at the Super Bowl because of the really good offseason that we have had. Everything on paper looks phenomenal. We had a good draft. We got Christian Darrisaw. We addressed the offensive line. Free agency was a little slow to start out. We brought in some critical players to fill some very key roles. The defense feels like it's been rebuilt. The defensive line should be a lot better than it was last year with Dalvin Tomlinson and the return of Michael Pierce, Danielle Hunter. The wide receiver depth has been addressed. I feel good about that this year. There's a lot of things to be excited about, except for this. And it feels like that this is an unnecessary roadblock, and now we're going to have to deal with this for the rest of the season. Minnesota Vikings ownership has spoken out and said that they are very concerned about the vaccination rate for their team. Mike Zimmer is clearly frustrated and clearly aware that he is going to have problems during the regular season. And this all boils down to what happened yesterday. And it's not just Kirk Cousins. He's going to take the brunt of it because he's the quarterback. He's the focus of the offense, the most popular position in one of the most popular professional sports leagues in the country. That is why that happens. Harrison Smith, Adam Thielen, I am also disappointed in them. And, whoever else happens to be making the choices that they are for misguided reasons. So here we go. The goals for today are to talk about what he had to say, react to it, and then have a small accountability session. So let's dive right in to how this press conference went. So right off the bat, just pulling, reports from media members that were in attendance, like Chad Graff of The Athletic, Arif Hassan, Courtney Cronin, and then having watched the video myself. He started off with dodging questions about being vaccinated, as is expected. This is nothing new. A lot of players around the league are using this excuse of it being a private health matter. Carson Wentz, Cam Newton had the similar things to say. Dak Prescott went as far as to say that it's a HIPAA thing, which it is not. Stop doing that, because that's not what HIPAA is. Stop doing that. I believe that this is the coward's way out of this question, because if you're going to have a position that is mostly agreed upon to be controversial, just own it. Just be honest up front and own it. Say, I'm not vaccinated. I have my hesitations. I'm good with where I'm at. I'm going to do the best that I can and make sure that this doesn't happen again. I think if he would have did that, instead of doubling down and contradicting himself over the course of 10 minutes, we'd be having a different conversation today, and we wouldn't be getting roasted as hard as we are on social media right now. He also said that Kirk Cousins himself and Mike Zimmer had a tremendous conversation, but wouldn't elaborate about what that conversation was. My reaction to that, his explanation of their conversation is this picture. That's my reaction to that. Uh, he stressed that he will be following protocols and be vigilant so that this doesn't happen again. He says, quote, protocols work, masks work, social distancing works. I agree. I agree that those things work. I also think that there is one more thing that you could be doing to make sure that you do not end up as a close contact case under NFL protocol rules. Again, just one little thing, one little layer of protection that you might be missing. He was asked if he would consider getting vaccinated to lower the risk of contracting the virus. He says, quote, I'm at peace where I'm at. That can be translated to no. Remember that this is the same guy who last year on a podcast said, if I die, I die. If it knocks me out, it knocks me out. He made his choice a long time ago about what he feels he is capable of in terms of contracting a serious disease. And he has clearly made his choice about his status regarding vaccination. He is not going to get it. Then he went on to say what I would argue are the three most egregious revelations of yesterday's press conference. The trifecta of bullshit is what I would like to call it. He had the nerve to blame the size of the quarterback meeting room. Come on. That sounds like just the lamest excuse in the playbook that you could possibly pull out to divert accountability away from yourself. They have since moved them into a larger room, so that can't be an excuse anymore. It's just ridiculous to even sort of, do that. He says he is doing his own research. Major red flag. Every person that I have seen say do their own research, and this is not just athletes, this is everyone in existence. Everyone who is saying do your own research, do your own research. You are not doing your own research, okay? Just because you link to somebody else's shitty YouTube video does not account as research. You are not an epidemiologist that is in a lab that is conducting, closed trials or, whatever, closed organized trials. You are not having your data and research subjected to the peer review process. You are not doing those things. What you were doing on Google is not research, okay? Google is free. Everyone can use it. Stop trying to pretend that you are smarter than you really are. It is ridiculous to have to hear people at this point say, do your own research, because there are paid professionals doing the research for us, okay? And it is peer-reviewed data, and it is trustworthy. It is evidence. It is scientific, okay? What you do on Google does not count. What the YouTube videos that you link to me that are made by some Joe Schmo does not count as research. He then said that he has not spoken to the NFL chief medical officer when asked about that. Major red flag. If you have concerns or questions or whatever else that you could think of that would be best answered by a chief medical officer, if that option is readily available to you and you are not taking it, that is a red flag, okay? The vaccine is free and readily available. Information regarding the free and readily available vaccine is also free and readily available. You are just misguided, okay? Let's just say it how it is. He also went on to say that the number one goal is to avoid being a close contact, to avoid having a repeat occurrence of what transpired over this past weekend. Some of the things that he talked about in order to achieve this goal would be building a fort of plexiglass around him during meetings, holding meetings outside under the goalpost in the middle of January. Ridiculous. He is willing to go to the ends of the earth, move mountain and stone in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again, except for doing the one simple thing that would make sure that it doesn't happen again, to make sure that he is not a close contact. And people want to argue that this is Kellen Mond's fault because he has the vaccine, he tested positive. I think he has the vaccine. Quote me if I'm wrong. But if Kirk Cousins would have been vaccinated, he would have been made available for that practice and not missed 5 days of training camp. That is why Jake Browning was available, because he was vaccinated. So he is not a close contact under NFL protocol rules. We'll get to more of that in a minute. So let's start by moving on to the take section. What is the bottom line here? What are the takeaways from this press conference yesterday? Number one, and the most important takeaway of them all, is that Kirk Cousins has made up his mind. It is his choice, and nothing is going to change his mind at all. If being labeled as a close contact and missing an entire weekend of practice does not motivate him, I am convinced that nothing will. His beliefs and his opinions are more important than the team's success this year and his availability to make sure that this team functions to the best that it can. Kirk Cousins will force his team to accommodate to his needs and wants first. That's ridiculous to me. That is selfish. That is not leadership. Forced because you don't want to do something. So you're going to force Jake Browning, Kellen Mond, Nate Stanley, the quarterback's coach, and everybody that you work with to accommodate you, right? To have a meeting in the middle of January in Minnesota. hopefully indoors so that it's not freezing cold, to move to a bigger room, to surround yourself with plexiglass. That's more of a him thing. But the greater picture here is that everyone else around him is going to have to meet his needs. And it's ridiculous. That is not leadership. And it's just bogus. Second, let's move on to the talking points of the Kirk's Crusaders / Defenders that we have seen generated over this past 36 hours. The NFL protocol rules are unfair. No, they're not. And even if they are, that's too bad, because the NFL is creating their conditions for employment, and they have to follow them. Kirk Cousins himself says, his own words, quote, "The protocol works." So if you're going to say that the protocol is unfair, you are contradicting the guy that you are defending. Why are you doing that? Nobody talks shit about the concussion protocol when it was implemented, because we all agreed that player safety was important. This is player safety. This is a player safety issue. If you are going to be okay with the concussion protocol and not okay with the NFL COVID-19 protocol, you are contradicting yourself and being hypocritical. I understand that concussions are not contagious, so that is a poor analogy, but at the same time, we're talking about player safety, okay? You could even make an argument that the concussion protocol is unfair. It would be a dumb argument, but you could make that argument, because even if you have the slightest suspicion that somebody has suffered a concussion, they get pulled out of the game and they have to go through the concussion protocol. Is that all up to snuff? I'm not sure, but it is what it is. Moving on, vaccinated players who test positive will still miss time. That is another talking point. That is true. If you are vaccinated and you test positive, you are going to miss time. At that point, consider yourself unfortunate and unlucky, because you've done all that you can and it still happened to you. That's just the end point, right? There's nothing that they can do beyond that. The situation here is that if Kirk Cousins would have been vaccinated, he wouldn't have missed time. We wouldn't have had this press conference, and we'd be talking about other things. Jake Browning was vaccinated. That's why he was available for the Saturday night practice and the practices that occurred after that. Nate Stanley was also not vaccinated. That's why he was out as well. Last but not least, it's a personal choice. It's a private matter. These are his liberties. Cousins is a very public figure, so the fact that it's a public thing makes it not really all that of a private thing. He doesn't live a very private life, right? So he is the starting quarterback, which is one of the more popular positions in all of sports in the country, for the NFL, which is one of the most popular sports, if not the most popular sport, professional sport in all of the country. He is on TV on a weekly basis during the regular season, and he talks to news media, which is not something that private citizens typically do. He is a public figure. We know more about him than we probably should. And so to say that this is a personal choice, if he was a lawyer, a substitute teacher, or somebody running his own lawn and garden business, yeah, sure, okay, I don't care. I don't even know who you are. The fact that you have a responsibility to your football team, where you are under contract for $31 million this year, and you are part of a very, very public organization and a very public professional league, is a completely different situation in my mind. So it's not always a personal choice. And the fact that people think it's a personal choice regarding a public health matter and a player safety matter, where you play with 52 other players. Do I have the roster size right? I don't remember. Where you play with all of those other people and you are in a community, and it's an infectious disease that is easily transmissible. It's a public health thing. It's not a personal health thing. Okay. I don't buy that argument anymore. It's lazy. Last but not least, the Vikings, thanks in large part to Kirk Cousins, and don't forget about the other players, as this team has one of the lowest vaccination rates, if not the lowest vaccination rate amongst NFL teams in the league. The Minnesota Vikings are now a national embarrassment today, yesterday, and probably going forward. We are getting dunked on super hard on social media. The memes are just ridiculous. They're already calling Kirk Cousins Bubble Boy, putting the Q in quarterback, Kirk Cousins spelled with Q's. It's not unfounded. It's not unfounded, and we probably deserve it, but do you really want to be going through that? Why do you want to go to bat for a guy who clearly does not want to go to bat for this team? I don't understand that conflict of interest. I really don't. So just to be aware, just to make you, the fan, aware that we're going to be dealing with this for the entirety of the regular season. During Green Bay week, both games, Detroit, Chicago, the division rivalry is going to be cranked up to 11, and if we don't win, it's going to suck. It's going to suck even harder, because they're going to have that much more ammunition to trash talk and shit talk to you every day and every night. So just be prepared, because that is the reality that we are fastly driving towards. All right, so last but not least, am I being unreasonable? Short answer, no. Thank you, goodbye. You click off the video. But let me just read a few things that I wrote and then, sort of get the bigger picture. Am I being unreasonable to think that a starting NFL quarterback on a team with high expectations from both the organization and fans alike, who commands a $31 million salary and is absolutely critical to the success of the offense and his team, should be doing everything they possibly can to not jeopardize their availability during the regular season when it matters the most? Am I being unreasonable to think a professional athlete to access with both team and league medical professionals, guys they rely on for everything else but this apparently, should communicate with them as opposed to doing their own research? Am I being unreasonable to be upset and frustrated with someone who offers more excuses and little to no inward reflection and accountability? I don't think that those 3 points are unreasonable at all. I think that those are very reasonable expectations. Listen, bottom line here is the doctors have said that getting vaccinated is the best way to protect yourself from COVID-19. This is not a pitch. This is not a PR thing. This is just reality. I'm not advising you. Don't get medical advice from me. The doctors have said, Kirk Cousins even admitted it himself, that the best way to protect himself against COVID-19 is vaccination. The best way to have a normal, season this year is COVID-19 vaccination. The owners have come out and said that they are perturbed. They are distressed about the vaccination rate of the organization. Mike Zimmer is clearly frustrated, and he clearly knows that they are going to find themselves in a situation where starting players are not going to be available, and he's going to have to make do. And we are really in a scenario right now where there is a huge probability where we are going to lose games because of this. I hope that we don't. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that this works out. Another thing that people have been saying is that they didn't have vaccines last year and they made it work. There's vaccines this year. Make it easier on yourself. That's all it really boils down to. So, in closing, I would like to say the following. I never thought Kirk Cousins had what it took to be a winner and a leader in this league. He's a very good quarterback with very good stats, but not very much else. He lacks these special intangibles that you see in Pat Mahomes and Tom Brady. He marches to the beat of his own drum. He's very robotic. Very rarely are things his fault, and on the even rarer occasion where he does offer self-criticism, he does so carefully to fulfill a premeditated purpose. When it comes to football, Cousins has made it clear that his interests and needs far exceed the team, with the goal of winning a championship on the back burner. I hope I am wrong, as I have said before, but even before the world knew of COVID-19, Cousins hasn't brought us any closer to a title, and now he's choosing to allow obstacles to potentially stand in his way that are preventable, and yesterday was basically confirmation of that. I don't want to say biased against Kirk Cousins, but my dislike for Kirk Cousins comes from the early days of the career. It's not just right now. It's not just stemming from, current events. It's stemming from the entirety of his career as the Minnesota Vikings. And then these recent events / current events have just been confirmation of that. So that is where I stand. You can let me know where you stand. If you are choosing to stick around after this video, I would thank you for that. We're going to talk about better things. We're going to talk about storylines and position previews and all that other good stuff. Hopefully this is the last time that we have to talk about this, but I wanted to give an honest take and get this all out here. And, feel free to react to it however you want. Try to be civilized about it and mature, but I've said what I had to say on the subject, and I think we're going to leave it at that. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.